Hello everybody, welcome back to the channel. The secret reason that Palantir is so secretive. Now, I did a podcast this weekend with someone named Grogu. I'll put their Twitter in the description. They're a very big Palantir bull. They were an early Tesla investor. They have 14,000 shares of Palantir, and I'll put the link to the full podcast in the description. I'm reacting to a part of it today. This podcast really got me to think a bit more differently about Palantir. Now, I'm someone who thinks about Palantir daily and has been thinking about Palantir daily since April of 2021, more November 2021 when I really started pushing out more content, but April 2021 is when I initiated my position. So I think about Palantir a lot. I host a Palantir podcast every Friday. I think really deeply about this company, especially because a lot of my money is tied up into it, and I think it can be an asymmetrical bet. I probably should have known the point that Grogu made this weekend, but I didn't really think of it really for the past couple months until he said it and then it clicked. And that's why I think this podcast was really special. He's someone who deeply tries to understand Apollo and the technology and the business side of it. So I really respect his opinion on Palantir. But when he said this, it got me thinking. Now, we're going to be reacting to a part of the podcast. I'm going to let it play and then I'm going to analyze. But overall, we're talking about why is Palantir so secretive? Why aren't they so public facing? Why did they kind of allow this narrative of being a secret company exist for so long without kind of clarifying? And the point he makes for why it's the case is so simple, but I do want to analyze it because it makes sense to me, and it made me even more bullish on my conviction for Palantir. So we're going to react to it. Now, the thing about Grogu is he explicitly does not like being on video, which is actually kind of perfect because I have a startup called Audea, which is trying to become the world's next biggest tech platform to make audio discoverable. So I will put the link in the description. So we're just going to be reacting to about 2 minutes of audio. And again, the reason I'm doing this is because his face is not on the internet. He doesn't like being a public person. But he did have some great audio. So I'm going to play this right here, and then I'm going to be reacting to it on the side.
Is what is distracting people from actually knowing what it actually is.
Yeah, that's. I think that's the biggest point of this podcast. That was a great point. Because I mean, it makes sense at the end of the day. Like, why would you logically want everyone to know what the fuck you're doing? Like, you don't. Like, when I talked about TikTok a little bit, given Meta has been collapsing on earnings. I don't think like TikTok wasn't outwardly saying, hey, we are changing the whole algorithmic nature of content from friends to interests. Because if they were saying that and it got on Facebook's radar, then 4 years ago, Facebook would have been like, oh shit, people are going to fundamentally change. The macro consumer attention is going to change from I want to see what Grogu's eating today to I don't care about Grogu. I care about what someone's eating at this waffle store near me because waffles are cool and waffles are pretty. And I want to see a nice little pretty video about waffles, which is what TikTok did. And they totally changed the market. And if Facebook knew that was coming, that would have changed. And so it makes sense why Palantir leans into the narrative. I mean, Carb absolutely leans in to the fact that product over sales because sales is stupid and no one gets our product, which is fine. That's great for them.
I'm okay with it. I don't think it's a problem, but because I think the product speaks for itself more than the actual advertisement of salespeople. Like I've been in companies, in software sales companies where, dude, we literally sold products and then the customers were forced to renew at a higher rate next year. And then on top of that, the manager would come up and he would say, okay, add this stuff on top of it and your actual commission is based on that. So we're like just selling crap at the end of the day, right?
Yep.
And then this whole retention stuff, and it's just like a lot of it just nonsense to me because coming from the software sales side, it's like, sure, like but like how many customers have come back and renewed? And other metric I look at is like, let me ask, actually I got a question.
So then he ends up asking me what's the average cost for Palantir, and then we kind of get into the retention argument there. That's a really, really, really big point. So there's two things that I want to talk about that I thought were incredibly important here. Number one, the idea that Palantir is secretive because they don't want the rest of the world to know how good their products are. I didn't really think of it, and then it kind of clicked in my head. I was like, wait a second. They could be more outwardly public, or they could have been over the past couple of years for who they are, what they do, how their company is so transformative. And then I realized, wait a second, why would you want to do that? Right? Like, let's really think about this in the macro competitive sphere. If you know you have the best product on the planet, you know you have a technology platform that, as per Tyson's Food CTO said, saved them $200 million when they spent $6 million. It's a 3,000% ROI on spending on Palantir software in terms of savings for the overall company. Why would you want the rest of the competitors in the tech arena to know that you've developed such a big potential product? Now, the short-term argument is that you miss Wall Street numbers, you don't have the best earnings, blah, 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 you don't grow as fast, whatever. But the long-term argument is that you catch these multi-trillion-dollar tech companies, Microsoft, Google, Amazon, off guard. And catching them off guard to me is an important thing, because if you're able to catch them off guard, then they're not able, I mean, they just didn't see what was coming. And if they didn't see that what was coming, well, then you have a chance to actually compete. You have a chance to actually win. Remember, Palantir is a $16 billion company. It has IL6 certification. Microsoft and Amazon are trillion-dollar companies, and they have IL level 6 certification from the DoD. Like, the idea that they have been secretive and they've been creating a product that is so fundamentally better than everybody else, and the rest of the world doesn't really believe or understand that, is a competitive advantage, and it adds to their moat. I know over the past couple months we've analyzed that they kind of suck at sales, and that was the point of the podcast I did with Grogu, because I was challenging him a little bit on, do they suck on sales? And he's like, yeah, the product speaks for itself though. So it's okay if they suck at sales, because if the product actually is that good, eventually it catches up. Eventually, like, you need the product to work. The product has to do what it needs to do, which is the second point I was going to say, which is that if the product is so good, it won't be a secret forever. And this goes to the TikTok analogy, right? Like, Facebook had a lot more users than TikTok for a long time, but slowly by slowly, if you look at Alex Zhu, who was the founder of TikTok Talk back in 2016, he explained what he was doing with TikTok, which is that he was not forming the content or the algorithms on the content towards the social graph, which is your friends and what Jack and Jesse are doing over the weekend. He was like, I don't think you care about Jack and Jesse that much. I think you care about this random dude from Minnesota who's actually really cool at backflips. And I'm going to show you that content. That content's going to work. And that content's going to keep you hooked. And for 4 to 5 years, Meta had no idea, because if they didn't have an idea, they would have changed their algorithmic nature. And now they started playing catch up back in 2021, a year ago, and it's kind of too late, right? Because TikTok has such an advantage. But for 4 years, they didn't realize that the way people would consume content was not going to be based on friends. It was going to be based on interests. And if Facebook loses its users consuming content, they don't have a business. And what keeps you going back to Facebook? Seeing your friends and family. Well, if you don't care about your friends and family anymore, because it's just not that entertaining, because we're having a macro level consumer shift of attention, where are you going to go? You're going to go to the platform that's showing you stuff you're interested in. You're interested in puppies? Boom, TikTok's going to show you about puppies. Now, if Facebook had known that this was the algorithmic change in terms of content distribution that was happening 5 years ago, I do not think they would be in this position, because they would have understood things are going to change. Let's adapt. If Google, Microsoft, Amazon knew that a single source of truth ontology layer, which is one of many things that Palantir is good at being in terms of being able to analyze data and be able to create predictive simulations of what to do with that data, how to execute on that data. If they knew Palantir was developing this stuff as intimately and intrinsically about 15 years ago, then maybe they would have stepped up their resources. If Google knew that AWS was going to be the next major cloud computing platform, and that was started back in 2006, if they knew about that in 2004, maybe they wouldn't have put all their eggs in one basket when it came to search. Maybe they would have started focusing on the cloud. They started focusing on the cloud about 5 years later, and now they're they're a fast-growing cloud company, a portion of their company, but they're the third slowest in terms of behind AWS and Azure. So it's a question of having a competitive advantage in a highly competitive technology sector and differentiating yourself in such a way that the product is so different that no one can replicate it, and no one really understands how to replicate it, because they can't do the things you've done because you spent 15 years developing it. But B, they don't even know what the hell you're doing. And Karp has said this many, many times. I mean, recently in his interview, they were asked what's going to happen in 2023. He said, I don't know. I'm living in 2027. And that's really cool to hear the CEO talk like that, because his argument is we are so far beyond these people. They don't know what we are doing, but they will know. And when they do know, we are going to explode. And so I wanted to react to this part of the podcast. I think it's a really good one. You should definitely check it out. He has 14,000 shares with Tesla. Grogu, he was early Palantir, early in Tesla in 2018. And the argument he makes just makes a lot of sense to me around the secretive nature of Palantir is secretive for a reason, and that actually is part of a moat. It's part of a competitive advantage. Yes, do they have to get sales right? Yes, do they have to get distribution right? Correct. But people are like, Microsoft has distribution, so they're going to beat Palantir. It's like, but they don't have a product. It's like, you can give a shittier product. It's like, I don't know if you can give a shittier product. And you can give a shittier product when it comes to Microsoft versus Zoom. I'll handle a shittier webcam. I don't know if I'm going to handle a shittier data analytics platform, because when I use Palantir, I save $200 million as per Tyson Foods. If I'm using Microsoft's thing, I don't know if I'm saving that much money. And so that's why I think there is a secret reason Palantir is so secretive. And that secret reason is not so secret, actually. They just want to be better than everybody else, and they don't want the rest of the world to know how good they are. Those are my thoughts. Thank you for listening, watching. Full podcast in the description. I'll see you guys in the next one.